Okay, they're both going. So, Leah, good magazine.
Hello.
No. So, what's your magazine about, genre-wise?
My magazine is an indie magazine, which is fitting to the name, autonomy, which basically means doing something for yourself, coming from autonomous, which means independently, freely. And it's basically, because indie's a very wide genre, it's basically including everything indie, so indie pop, indie rock, indie grunge, indie, all forms of indie.
And how have you reflected this widespread, as opposed to just sort of focusing on one subgenre? How have you made sure people know that, oh, so-and-so in this, it must be?
Well, with my pictures that I have on the contents page, the double page spread, and the front cover, so the front cover's more, I won't say grunge indie, or indie rock.
It looks awfully happy to be grunge indie, don't you think?
Well, the picture itself, or the artist itself, himself, because with all the darker colours and with the background contrasting with the pink, bright pink, and blue writing, I think it's quite good contrast. But so that's more indie rock. The contents page shows a lot of other bands, even a mixed genre band, which are kind of skinhead indie, if that's a thing. But yeah, so it's basically all, I've featured artists and bands like the 1975, going to the Smiths, to Arctic Monkeys as well. So 1975 are more indie pop, whereas the Smiths are more old indie rock, and Arctic Monkeys kind of mix that of both.
Okay. So, who's your demographic, and how would you sort of let a reader know, oh, this is for me, or oh no, this is aimed at whoever, I'm too old for this?
My demographic are millennials, so basically...
It's not a phase, Mom.
Basically in this year, 16-year-olds to 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, basically anyone who actually likes indie music, because it's aimed at a wider demographic, honestly, yeah, because of the differences in indie music. So I've kind of represented that in the bands that I featured, and the colour contrasts. So it's quite like a young looking magazine, with the bright colours, with the neon, with the fonts. Used quite a variation of fonts as well, even double page spread and the contents page. So, and with the graphics on it, with the CDs, and yeah.
So how, we've talked about your cover reflecting indie music as a whole, with the grunge of Felix mixing with the bright colours of everything else, such as the Alt J album or Thing featured in the bottom corner. So how have you sort of reflected that with the contents page and your double page spread?
You mean the bright colours and the...
Just how have you reflected how sort of not unorganised but unorganised indie
So like
music
the
is
indie
and
scene.
can be?
Honestly, I wanted to go with more the Mojo Magazine style of magazine. So if you look at Mojo Magazine contents page, for example, there's just one big image and it's very clean. But then again, Mojo Magazine is not all about indie. It's more style and fashion and music, but yeah, it's not the just focusing on the indie bit. It's also a lot of different music genres. My one's quite not busy. It's a mix up of busy and relaxed, which I guess you can kind of say the same thing about the indie scene. There are quite a few bands that are heavier, as I said before, and other bands that want to appeal more to the mainstream audience and that are more light and pop. And And in my contest page, I've reflected that as in having it quite neatly laid out, but having a lot of information in there. So also using the colours again, showing, you know, the liveliness of the indie scene. And I've only used 4 images, but they're 4 very different images. So black and white, neon colours, just standard landscape picture. Yeah.
There's something else. So, would you say that you've been quite, not heavily influenced, but influenced by Mojo, or where would you say that
definitely. Mojo magazine was definitely a big influence for my magazine. Also Clash magazine, but they're very big magazine titles, especially because mine isn't, because it's just this media project. But
you're telling me that it's not a magazine?
no, it's not. Well, hopefully, maybe one day. But yeah, Mojo is definitely a big influence, especially how the double page spread's laid out, and how I wanted to lay the front cover out just as one big image. Not two. I don't have any other images on the double page spread, which is definitely influenced from the Clash and Mojo. But everything else was kind of, yeah, kind of a mix out of magazines that I searched for. Also fashion magazines. There's a fashion magazine called Indie, which looked very aesthetically pleasing, which I wanted to go for, the different colours and contrasts. So yeah.
And sticking with Mojo being an influence, so Mojo sold at most, I think, big name newsagents, isn't it? So where would you ideally want yours to end up, or where do you think that it would be on offer?
Yeah, I thought about this quite a lot. Either I'd want a magazine to be produced by Wow Media, as Mojo is as well, so it would be sold in newsagents, different other shops, bookshops, but I also thought about targeting it at a specific audience, even though it's a wide range of indie. Not many indie people or indie music lovers like going to mainstream shops, and they like feeling independent. That's all what's indie is about. So I thought about selling it at record shops or independent venues. My magazine only comes out monthly, so maybe just advertising in different venues as well. And yeah, so it's targeted at a certain type of audience. So if the indie band is playing at that venue, then they'd hopefully want to distribute a magazine.